December had wrapped Manhattan in gold lights and silver frost. Storefront windows along Fifth Avenue sparkled with oversized ornaments, and Salvation Army bells rang in steady rhythm beneath drifting snow. Taxis honked impatiently, their roofs dusted white. The air smelled like roasted chestnuts and ambition. High above the city, in a glass-walled corner office, Ethan Caldwell stood perfectly still. At precisely subah ke 5 baje, he had run 3 miles on his penthouse treadmill. At subah ke 6 baje, black coffee. At subah ke 7 baje, market briefings. At subah ke 9 baje, quarterly review. Every movement of his life was rehearsed. Predictable, efficient, successful. As CEO of Caldwell Orpheus Industries, Ethan believed discipline was the only honest path to achievement. You repeated the right actions long enough, and they became automatic. Habits built empire. Emotions, however, destroyed them. Which is why he disliked Christmas. Not the holiday itself, but the unpredictability that came with it. Office parties, forced cheer, personal questions, and now, apparently, blind dates. The company Christmas gala was held at the Grand Monarch Hotel, a chandelier-drenched landmark overlooking Central Park. Executives in tailored suits and silk gowns mingled beneath towering wreaths and a 12-foot Christmas tree. Ethan stood near the bar with sparkling water, observing rather than participating. "Sir," his assistant Marissa said, appearing at his side with a grin that usually meant trouble, "you donated to 6 charities this month, approved bonuses, and doubled the holiday outreach fund." "And," he asked calmly, "and you still look like you were auditing a funeral." He exhaled slowly. "This event costs productivity." She leaned closer. "You know what costs more? Isolation." Ethan didn't respond. Marissa lowered her voice conspiratorially. "We organized something fun this year." "I dislike that word already." "A blind date." He stared at her as if she had suggested bankruptcy. "No, it's anonymous. It's festive. It's human." "Human?" he repeated flatly, as if it were a volatile market variable. "It's Christmas, Ethan. That is not a business argument. It's not a business proposal." He took a measured sip of water. Around them, laughter swelled. A string quartet played, "Have yourself a merry little Christmas." "You're 38, Marissa pressed. You schedule everything. You optimize everything. You control everything. That is leadership. That," she corrected gently, "is fear of unpredictability." The word landed heavier than he expected. He didn't like that. "Fine," he said at last. "One dinner. Christmas Eve. Neutral location. No publicity. No internal gossip afterward." Marissa's triumphant smile nearly matched the tree lights. "Deal." Across the East River in Brooklyn, Anna Rivera was folding laundry when her phone buzzed. She answered without looking. "If this is about me working overtime again." "It's about you not living at all," Sophia interrupted dramatically. Anna laughed. "That's not true. I live at the hospital." "That's my point." Sophia explained the holiday blind date exchange her friend had secretly entered her into. Anonymous. Simple dinner. Just conversation. Anna dropped onto her couch. "Sophia," she said slowly, "I work 12-hour shifts in pediatrics. My idea of risk is switching coffee brands." "Exactly. You need a story. I prefer peace." "Peace is good, but so is possibility." Anna looked around her small apartment. The Christmas tree in the corner was modest, decorated with handmade ornaments from former pediatric patients. A string of warm white lights blinked softly. Her life wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. Every Sunday she volunteered at church. Every Friday she wired money to her mother. Every morning she woke at subah ke 6:30 baje, packed the same peanut butter sandwich, and walked to the subway with quiet determination. Her habits weren't about control. They were about care. "A blind date feels reckless," she admitted. "Or brave." Anna hesitated. Maybe bravery and recklessness were cousins. "Fine," she sighed. "One dinner. If he's unbearable, I'm blaming you forever." Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in snowfall. The restaurant chosen for the date was elegant but understated, warm amber lighting, polished wood floors, and a fireplace glowing softly near the back wall. Snow drifted past tall windows like shaken glitter. Ethan arrived 10 minutes early. Habit. He chose a seat with clear visibility of the entrance. Strategic positioning. Efficient exit options. He checked his watch. Sham ke 7 baje. Right on time, the door opened. Anna stepped inside, brushing snow from her red sweater. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold. She paused briefly, scanning the room before meeting his eyes. She didn't look like the women typically presented at corporate galas. No diamond necklace, no dramatic entrance, just warmth. Ethan stood automatically as she approached. "Ethan," she asked. "Yes, Anna." They shook hands, firm, polite. And awkward. So, she said with a small smile as they sat, we're someone's Christmas prank. It appears so. A flicker of amusement passed between them. The waiter poured water. Silence followed. Ethan initiated the standard structure. What do you do? I am a pediatric nurse at St. Mary's, she replied. He nodded. Demanding work. It's worth it. And you? She asked. Logistics and infrastructure management. She raised an eyebrow playfully. That sounds serious. It is. Do you enjoy it? He paused. No one had asked him that in years. It functions efficiently, he answered. She smiled. That's not what I asked. Something in her tone wasn't challenging, just curious. Before he could respond, a crash shattered the air. A waiter had dropped a tray. Glass exploded against the floor. A small boy at a nearby table burst into tears. Without hesitation, Anna stood. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't performative. It was automatic. She knelt beside the child, speaking softly, checking his hands for cuts, calming his breathing with steady reassurance. It's okay, she whispered. Look at me. Deep breath. You are safe. The boy's sobs slowed. His mother mouthed thank you repeatedly. Anna returned to the table as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Sorry, she said lightly. Occupational reflex. Ethan stared at her. He had spent decades building reflexes that maximized profit margins. Hers maximized comfort. The difference unsettled him. You didn't hesitate, he observed. She shrugged. Children cry. You help. That's it. That's not efficient. She tilted her head. Kindness really is. For a moment, he had no structured response. The conversation shifted after that. Less formal, less rehearsed. She told him about a little girl who believed hospital IV poles were robot friends. He found himself laughing, genuinely, for the first time that evening. He spoke about building his company from a rented storage unit at 23. She listened, truly listened, without scanning the room or checking her phone. Outside, snow fell heavier. Inside, something unfamiliar began to thaw. Not love, not yet, but disruption. Ethan realized something unsettling. His habits had built success. But hers built connection. And for the first time in years, the perfectly controlled rhythm of his life felt incomplete. As the waiter cleared their plates, Anna smiled softly. Well, she said, this wasn't terrible. No, Ethan admitted quietly. It wasn't. And for a man who measured life in precision and predictability, that small deviation felt like the beginning of something dangerously, beautifully, unplanned. For the first time in 15 years, Ethan Caldwell did not wake at subah ke 5 baje. The alarm buzzed once. He stared at the ceiling of his Manhattan penthouse, snowlight reflecting against the glass walls. Normally, he would already be running, heart steady, pace calculated, calories burned tracked precisely. But today, he silenced the alarm. And lay still. Anna's laughter from the night before echoed in his thoughts. Not loud, not dramatic, just warm, effortless. He sat up slowly. Disruption felt strange. His phone blinked with automated reminders. सुबह के 5 बजे, run, सुबह के 6 बजे, coffee, सुबह के 7 बजे, weekly projections review, सुबह के 9 बजे, virtual board check-in. He cancelled them all, one by one. His thumb hovered over the screen before he opened his messages. There it was, the address Anna had casually mentioned when talking about volunteering. St. Matthew's Church, Brooklyn. Christmas food drive. He didn't overthink it. For once, he showered, dressed in a simple dark coat instead of his usual tailored statement suit, and left without calling his driver. He took the subway, habit broken. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Anna tied her hair into a loose ponytail and stepped into the small church hall already buzzing with activity. Children ran between folding tables. Volunteers stacked canned goods. A plastic Christmas tree blinked in one corner, slightly crooked but cheerful. Anna loved this part of the holiday. No fancy dinners, no expectations, just people helping people. She handed a small wrapped toy to a shy little boy clutching his mother's coat. Merry Christmas, she said gently. He smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. Moments like that were why she kept her habits. Not because they were easy, but because they mattered. The church doors opened behind her. Cold air drifted in. She didn't turn at first, assuming it was another volunteer. Then she heard a voice. Excuse me, is this the food distribution? She froze. She knew that voice. Anna turned slowly. Ethan stood near the entrance, snow dusting his dark hair, looking oddly uncertain. Not commanding, not executive, just human. Her eyes widened. Ethan, he gave a small, almost shy nod. Hi. The room seemed to shrink around them. What are you doing here? She asked, stepping closer. He exhaled softly, trying something new. She crossed her arms, half smiling. And that is, not running. She laughed before she could stop herself. He continued, more serious now. Last night you said kindness isn't efficient. I did. We built my entire life on efficiency, he admitted. But I realized something. She waited. I don't remember the last time I did something that didn't benefit a quarterly report. Her expression softened. So you came to volunteer. He nodded. If you'll have me. She studied him carefully, searching for irony, ego, performance. She found none. Grab a box, she said finally. We're sorting produce. For the next hour, Ethan carried crates of apples, packed grocery bags, and followed Anna's instructions without argument. His hands, used to signing contracts, now lifted potatoes and canned beans. At first, volunteers whispered. Some recognized him. A few stared, but Ethan ignored them. A little girl tugged at his coat. Mister, can you reach that one? She asked, pointing at a high shelf. He blinked, then reached up easily and handed her the box. Thank you, she beamed. The word struck deeper than he expected. Thank you, not for a measure, not for a deal, just for helping. Across the room, Anna watched him. He wasn't perfect. He stacked one box incorrectly. He moved too stiffly at first. But he stayed, he tried, and slowly, the sharp edges of his posture softened. Later, the church coordinator, Mrs. Green, approached Ethan cautiously. Mr. Caldwell, we didn't expect. Ethan is fine, he interrupted gently. She hesitated. Our food program runs out of funding every February. We stretch what we can, but... He glanced around at the nearly empty shelves already thinning after one morning. How much would it take, he asked calmly, to operate year-round? Mrs. Green looked startled. Sir, that's not... Please, he said quietly. Just tell me. She named a number. He didn't flinch. Consider it handled, he replied. Anna overheard. Her steps slowed. You don't have to do that, she said once they were alone near the doorway. I know, he answered. Then why? He met her gaze directly. Because for the first time in a long time, I want to. There was no press release. No cameras. No public statement. Just a quiet phone call to his finance director. Habit replaced with intention. By late afternoon, the food had been distributed. The children had gone home. The hall was quieter now, snow still falling gently outside. Anna stepped onto the church steps, pulling her coat tighter. Ethan followed. Brooklyn looked peaceful beneath its white blanket. You surprise me, she admitted. I surprise myself. She smiled softly. Most people in your position would have sent a donation and stayed home. That's what I normally do. Why didn't you? He paused, searching for honesty rather than polish. Because last night, when that little boy cried in the restaurant, you didn't calculate the outcome. You didn't consider whether helping him would advance your career. She tilted her head. You just moved, he continued. It was instinct, a habit built from caring. Snowflakes landed on her hair again, just like the night before. I realized, he said quietly, I've trained myself to react to opportunity. Not to people. And today I tried reacting to people. A long silence passed between them, not awkward, just thoughtful. Habits are powerful, Anna said finally. They shape who we become. Yes, he agreed. And sometimes they trap who we might be. She looked at him, something warmer in her eyes now. So what happens next, Mr. Efficiency? He smiled, a real one. Coffee, he said, without a schedule. She laughed softly. That's very rebellious of you. I'm learning. Snow continued to fall around them, soft and steady. For once, Ethan Caldwell wasn't thinking about forecasts or profit margins. He was thinking about possibility. And Anna, the woman who had unknowingly knocked on the carefully guarded door of his structured life, stood beside him as Christmas bells rang faintly in the distance. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives as a joke. A dinner invitation, a broken glass, a small act of kindness. And sometimes, the greatest success isn't built from perfect habits.